I'd like to welcome you to this AJ100 breakfast, the first one that we've had of the 2018-2019 season. We've 5 more of these events scheduled for the season, and the next is on the 8th of September, a networking event held in central London. We hope you enjoy these AJ100 events. We certainly do enjoy hosting them. So on to our speaker, Eyal Weizman. He established the independent research agency Forensic Architecture, which uses pioneering architectural techniques to investigate injustices and human rights abuses around the world.
We were asked by Amnesty International to investigate a prison, perhaps one of the most notorious prisons in Syria, where tortures and executions are taking place. There's been no images of it, there's been no visits of international groups, no photographs, no journalistic visits, etc. We had 5 refugees in Turkey, survivors of that prison, that needed to tell us what happened there, and from that we needed to reconstruct the architecture and the processes of what has taken place in it. Because the prisoners were led there blindfolded, they haven't even seen the building, we've had to undertake an acoustic reconstruction of that place, looking at a combination of architectural and acoustic reconstruction allowed us to both represent that prison and also create a situation by which prisoners could recall what was otherwise too traumatic to speak about. Sometimes measuring simple elements together with them, starting from floor tiles, from door details, etc., allowed that process to take place. The report was published, was picked up also by the United Nations and other major international bodies, led to enormous protest against Syria. And of course, the pushback, Amnesty International hired special effect expert to fabricate evidence. Every evidence that you are bringing becomes fabrication. In this case, we also had a denial from the very top.
The report that you have mentioned, it was a report made by Qatar and financed by Qatar. You don't know the source, you don't know the names of those victims. Nothing verified about that report. It was paid by Qatar.
We still wait for the Qatari money to come, and it hasn't. When you get material off the web, many photographs and videos that people post, they don't have the metadata anymore. The way to establish the metadata is to find markers in the image that could establish time. And what we've done, we've synced up all the bomb clouds that we could see in different images to see which image is contemporary with which. Here is an example of how we might identify munition split second before it is touching the ground by building a kind of photographic image models that allow us to measure the bombs in mid-air, identify them, and later pursue supply chain activism against those producers. We all heard about how Facebook is being used to survey and violate our privacy. It also violates the privacy of militaries. Sometimes, very, very usefully so, we were asked again by Amnesty International to do a work on this prison in northern Cameroon, a prison that is supplied by US and also Israeli contractors, where grave human rights violations are taking place, torture and execution of Boko Haram suspects. The American denied any knowledge or involvement until one of their service personnel forgot to switch off the location
US personnel are seen
marker on their Facebook, and we could see exactly, we could build an architectural model of this base and locate precisely each one of the videos that he posted. Here you see American soldiers, special forces playing football with night vision equipment with Cameroonian ones, and we could see exactly that American personnel were in this base, very close to where torture was taking place within it. Here is a slide by the Italian prosecutor claiming that that little rubber dinghy towing that wooden boat is part of a people smuggling operation. These are actually NGOs that rescue people in the Mediterranean. They claim that they tow the boat towards the Libyan territorial water. This is the work we've done with Forensic Oceanography, another affiliated group. How do they know that they tow this boat towards the Libyan territorial water? What's in this image gives you an understanding of direction. And again, direction is the very accusation against the NGO, an accusation that led to it being banned from the Mediterranean, from the boat being confiscated. Well, we have the waves. So can we motion track the waves and look at the way in which this build perhaps a kind of a model of the water here, and look very, very carefully at the direction of the wave and compare it to the meteorological data, historical one that are saved of that day. And what we see, the boat is towing away from the Libyan coast. So all that accusation is simply false. As you remember, on the 7th of April, there were 2 chlorine canister dropped in the city of Douma, Syria, just outside Damascus. There was a big debate about whether it was a chemical attack or not. The New York Times asked us to look at the architectural evidence to reconstruct from what was, in fact, the Russian media, which was the only one that was allowed access to the site of these attacks. The Russian media claimed that actually what we see here, this is the chlorine canister, was brought onto the site by Syrian rebels themselves, and in order to fake and kind of to level false accusation against the Syrian regime. However, when they photographed that site or filmed that site and put a sort of a soundtrack with rhetoric saying this is a staged crime scene, they also captured a lot of elements that became very important for us in analyzing.
Consistent with the canister having been dropped from a...
And so we reconstructed, simply using the Russians' own images, we are able to locate every photograph in space. We were able to locate the canister, and we're able to see damage above that is consistent with the trajectory of a fall, of a very sharp fall, from a relatively static platform, such as a helicopter. Otherwise, the angle would have been sharper. We could see also in the rubble itself, we could see all sort of elements that are consistent with sort of a drop, a gravity drop of that canister. We could see the harness of the canister in the rubble. This harness is what, in fact, weaponizes something that could be a benign hospital equipment. Chlorine is used for disinfectant, etc. But if you put that harness over it, this allows it to be used as a weapon. We look at open source archives. We could see even the wheels that are used to drop the canister from above. Here is a way in which we combine multiple images from frames into a single surface that we can unwrap and create a canister now as an object, as a very detailed object that we could look as a surface of inscription and start reading it, almost like you read Braille. What are the traces left on this canister that could tell us something about what has happened? Initially, obviously, it's the charring of the top, which we again go to sources and see that in other chlorine attack you have that kind of charring. This comes from the explosive head that is there to remove the nozzle and let the gas in. But we see also a little indentation that is, and here a little deformation on the facade, which are conducive with its being got an impact and being dropped. Here we're seeing very clearly we're seeing grid signs on the facade that are exactly the same size as the fence that, as I showed you before, was hanging from above. You know, sometimes it feels very, very nerdy, very, very detailed kind of patient exploration, but this is what it takes to confront fake news accusations.